Hi, everyone. Welcome. Carl Steinbeck here. Want to cover a few things tonight. The information that's coming out of the public records release about the phone calls from Charlie out of his jail cell to mostly his family are quite revealing and quite telling, and I think going to be helpful to the prosecution of other family members. The one thing I want to say is last time I covered the issue that I'd gotten off a Law and Crime Network that there was some conversation about Donna indicating that she made some statements that I thought sounded incriminating towards Wendy. And listening to that after you guys were bringing me up other indications that it wasn't the case, I did look at that, and because of the rest of the conversation indicates that she says something contrary to what I thought I had heard and what was being reported. I actually think you guys are right, so I think I'm standing corrected on that. I do think it still sounds like what I said and reported it to be sounding like, and so I agree with Law and Crime on that. But I think that when you look at the totality of all that information, I think that maybe it's a glitch in this recording or something like that, but it does sound like it to me. And so in any event, but I think that taken in context, what I try to look at evidence is like the totality of it, what makes the most sense to me. And I've talked to some friends that are avidly following this as well. We still have disagreements about it, but I actually think my position now is much clearer, that I think that the evidence indicates that that's not something she did say, that oh yes you were, as opposed to didn't say you were. So that was like the point of contention that different people were having. So, but it also brings out the point that you guys found this case, know this case collectively better than any individual person can normally follow. And obviously I don't follow this as closely in detail as if I was the actual prosecutor of the case, right? So as a prosecutor case, you're living and breathing a case, especially as a murder case. So but anyway, what you always got to do is keeping your mind open to other alternative ideas. You war game it. You have tiger teams, war teaming on stuff, and what's the best way to not only decipher the information, the evidence, but also the best way to present it. So, and juries are smart. They pick up on stuff like that. So if you miss something, you miss a beat as a prosecutor. Jurors pick up on that, and they know how to like interpret stuff better than a lot of times prosecutors do. And like I say, no one always gets it right as a prosecutor. So anyway, what I'm trying to do is just bring you the best information, how I look at it from a strategic standpoint, a tactical standpoint, as a trial attorney, as a former prosecutor trying violent crime cases, as well as the defense counsel. So I try to bring that level of perspective to you here. So with that being said, one of the things that I thought was very interesting from these tapes being released is that Charlie was mentioning me. He didn't actually say Carl, but he mentioned John Steinbeck, my brother John. And he also mentioned mentor, jury trial mentor, something like that. He sort of jarbled the words. And he actually was saying how I mentioned how Georgia's closing was like a documentary or a movie, or it was just so compelling and it pulled all the details of the information together. So as I understand it, when he was driving over to the being hauled over in the van from the jail cell to the courthouse, the van driver had on the iHeart local radio there with Preston Scott. And I was on, I think, about 5 different mornings. So I was on the day before the closing arguments. I was in the day of the closing arguments, and which turned out to be also the day of the conviction. And I was on the following day after that. So it was on the following day after that, after the verdict was announced, that Charlie, I guess if he heard in the van driver, no, that couldn't have been the case. Anyway, one of those last couple of days, he heard me that I was saying what a phenomenal job Georgia had done. And it seemed like that was the first time it dawned on him that the evidence was strong and whatnot. So I noticed he's using that a lot in his commentary. There was like a Dateline special, a 2-hour special or whatnot. And that's how long her closing was. So in any event, I thought that was so compelling of Georgia to do that. And what John's working on doing is he's extracting those comments I had for the last couple of days of this trial, and going to put those on there. So that's one or both of those what Charlie was listening to apparently. So and I do think that it was so strong of a compelling closing that, like I say, if other Adelsons were at the table, they would have been convicted as well. So but what we do have by the daisy chain effect of Adelsons being prosecuted is they are talking amongst each other, even on jail recordings. So think about this. Charlie can't even keep his mouth shut pending this conviction, and after his his talks of this conviction, and he's just trying to process it through his mind, and he's still in shock and disbelief. But the stuff he's saying about his sister Wendi Adelson is really, really incriminating, and I think a lot of it bolsters the those of us that believe there is enough evidence to go after Wendy, just like there has been enough to go after Donna. And so a lot of this stuff he's saying is he's basically talking about circumstantial evidence. And if you look at when he keeps talking about what are the odds you drive by the place that Dan was murdered just within an hour or so after the murder, what are the odds of that happening? And he even mentioned he talked to that to a buddy of his, and he's like, she really went by there, that short of the time frame after the murder. And he's like, yeah, that's what she did. And he goes, oh, wow, that sounds really, really bizarre. And it looked like, one in 10,000 in some of the comments he made, or one in a million chances of that happening. And he also brought up the point about the postal man that was on the jury. He was also apparently a retired Army soldier. And so he was saying, like, he knows every address, he knows every street like the back of his hand, working for the post office for 20 some years. And for him to be able to know how far out of the way that was from where she was going to ABC Liquor, she could have, and he actually mentioned she could have stopped at other places that were on the way towards her lunch place as well. So it was just so damning. So for him to make those comments, and the way he really emphasized that trip she made to the crime scene, and he called it a crime scene. And then she also didn't check on her kids. He mentioned that one time, but mostly what he's talking about is the trips that the trips that she made to go to the crime scene so close to after the murder. He even mentioned some kind of John Costello, I think it was, some kind of gangster who a mob type a hit that was done, and I guess the guy that did the hit got caught out like a block away from the place that the person was murdered. And it was circumstantial evidence to show this guy must have been in it because they had bad beef between them and bad blood. And this is the guy that was most threatening to the victim, and turns out he's just caught a block away. So that kind of evidence is like really critical, and it helps paint the picture for the jury on who did this. And so for Charlie to mention that as well, he's really putting a lot of weight on Wendy. It really sounds like he's making arguments that Georgia could actually use in the prosecution of her. And I thought, in a way, he's sort of like starting to become in the mindset of like, you know what, I don't want to admit to anything yet, but I do want to speak out about my sister's involvement and how her display of guilt actually had a carryover effect for my case. So he's really realizing that's why they're using Wendy to really set the scene on how she was acting so strange, so suspicious, so incriminatory in her behavior that really reflects a consciousness of guilt. And so he's making a number of comments about how the jury's picking up on that kind of stuff against her. And so I think that this is like sort of the first stages of how he's maybe thinking he's got to flip towards her. He's also talking about how horrible prison is. Think about how he's talking about being stabbed in prison. If you get stabbed in prison, you can't rat the person out that stabbed you, because then they're going to come after you even more. And he was even talking about how if someone got transferred after reporting a stabbing to try to not get taken out a second time, that it's reported publicly what jail you're going to be at. And so any transfer order and stuff like that, he was making it sound to Donna that the other gang would know about him coming to their site, their prison, before somebody would get there. So he painted this really scary picture of what it's like to be in prison and how dangerous it is and whatnot. And as I heard it, it sounded like Harvey had to go lay down because he heard bits and pieces of conversation. He couldn't take it. He was getting so upset. And Donna used the words that he was losing it. So if Harvey's losing it, just hearing about what potential problems that Charlie's going to face once he goes to prison, and he had to go lay down, and Charlie was taking him to go tell him to take some Xanax. So it's just very incriminatory type stuff that these conversations just are basically making them lose it. And that's what I think is a benefit. Once you start charging co-conspirators, and especially you got some elderly ones here, they really start losing it. They can't handle it. And keep in mind, this conversation happened before when Donna got arrested. So Donna was arrested. A lot of these conversations are occurring between the 6th and the 8th of November. And think about it now, that She was arrested on the 13th of November. So that's not too many days later after that. So I think what we're going to have is these things are rolled out. I think we're going to have even more incriminating information. I think Charlie's even going to be more outspoken about how his sister got her behavior helped bring him down. And I think what he's doing is building up a lot of resentment and anger. And once he finds out that his sister never inquired about him, that his mom had to lie about how she was so upset. And that was once he finds out that's an all lie, because I think that he's going to find out that through any number of means, then then I think that's really going to be an incentivizer for him to go, you know what? I got no chance of an appeal. He's already talked about how Rashbaum told him there was really not much of a chance of appeal at all because the judge was such a fair judge and kept out a lot of stuff they wanted to have suppressed, and different rulings during the court proceedings as well. That basically he protected the record well, and the prosecution did the same thing. They didn't want to have a muddied record with a lot of stuff that could bust the case on appeal. And so with that, he said he was telling Donna basically he's got really no hope, not much hope. And she tried to encourage him. Yeah, they're going to do what they can to, help him out and whatnot. But he didn't know at the time these conversations were happening. She's about to try to flee the country with Harvey. So they pretty much bailed on him, as he's going to find out as well. So once I think it sinks in that both mom and dad bailed on me, and even though he knew that I got some kind of inkling that was happening, I think the bottom line is the all of the Adelsons have basically abandoned him. So including Wendy. Wendy wants nothing to do with him. She considers any conversation about him toxic. And so she can't even talk. She can't even say, "Oh, I'm sorry what happened to Charlie. He got convicted." She can't even do that because she's falling under the guise of my attorney told me not to talk about the case. Well, what was happening was that Donna was just trying to get some kind of emotion of sympathy for her brother. And what happened? Wendy had not an ounce of sympathy, not an ounce of concern, not a request for how is Charlie handling this, right? Because they all thought this thing is a slam dunk win, a slam dunk win. He's walking out of there. Charlie talked about how he gave away all of his possessions. He gave away things that he later on, after he got convicted, had to ask for back and whatnot. But he thought he was a free man. This is an open and shut case. And so it also begs the question is like, why would he think that? Why would he really think that he did such a good job on the witness stand? Did he really think that he could pull the wool over the eyes of the jurors that to that extreme, that he had a slick response for every single thing that was incriminating and damning against him? So, and he basically also says that his lawyer told him this. So it's really something to, I don't know if that's true or not, but imagine if your lawyer is telling you how great this is of a case and you did great on the witness stand and they expect you to walk out of there after deliberations. And then what do you get? You get such a quick return vote of guilty by 12 jurors. And so those 12 jurors, he even said he could tell that they had their minds made up. Well, I think they saw enough about the way he acted and the way he was very dismissive and condescending towards Georgia and trying to own the room like he did. Yeah, I mean, the jury pretty much was able to conclude early on, even though they couldn't discuss it among themselves, that this was a slam dunk case. And his testimony was absolutely atrocious. His defense theory was just completely off the charts, so ridiculous. I mean, I was just thinking that that if you brought this theory up to a room full of experienced prosecutors and defense attorneys and said this is your theory of the case, no one would think this is a credible theory. Nobody. Okay, it's so ridiculous, so far fetched, and yet Charlie went in there just completely blown away and still is having trouble coming to grips with the fact. He's still in shock that this could actually happen and he's actually convicted. And what's he doing? He's blaming the jury. He's blaming the jury for basically being dumbed down to a third grade level, that the movie presentation, the slick documentary for Georgia, none of it was evidence. It was just all things that were taken off of emails, off of texts. She showed um, the the gruesome photos of Dan after he was had the 2 shots to the head, and he was complaining that those were left up too long for the jury to see. So basically, he made it sound like Georgia did a hit job, but then he sort of evolves to basically be saying how he understands how Wendy then put the weight on him as well. And so basically, he says to the effect that if you look thinking of the odds that she drives by the scene there, that she doesn't check on her kids. And granted, there's all these police cars there and evidence tape, do not cross crime scene tape and whatnot. And then he also ties that in with the bump. What are the odds that after the bump happens, this is almost 2 years later after the murder, what are the odds after the bump that they use the word for TV code that day of the murder as well? So you got the TV code being talked about the day of the murder. And then as soon as a bump happens, that's what's coming out of their mouths as well. And so he's saying, what are the odds those all things combined together could happen? And so I thought it was really things that Georgia would be using on her arguments to prosecute Wendy as well. So I think what I see here is a groundwell of support for the state attorney's office to continue to march ahead, to continue to go after the evidence and follow the evidence where it leads you. And I think it's led them a long time ago. But I do see that they're calling forth a speedy trial by the defense for Donna. And I think that if they use Wendy again for Donna, I see her arrest probably happening really soon thereafter. And I think also what you're looking at is probably Charlie, once he's processed, he's in a processing center right now, could be there a month or so. And they're going to evaluate him and decide where to stick him. And so he's going to be transferred to a different prison. And so once he's transferred to a different prison, keep in mind, it's probably not going to be in South Miami. So he's not going to be able to talk to his mom. So contrary to what Donna was saying, you can talk to us anytime. No, you can't. Once he goes to prison, I think she didn't realize that once she goes to prison, you don't have these phone privileges like you do in a jail. And so they're going to have to actually go visit him. They don't have these kind of telephonic visitations like she's expecting. And then so if he's, hundreds of miles away up in a prison somewhere, how's he going to get there? His mom's not going to visit him. Wendy wants nothing to do with him. So how's Harvey going to get up there to visit him? So once he has this isolation from them, he can't talk to him. And what's Harvey going to do? Hire somebody else to drive him up there to see him because Wendy won't. Once he knows Wendy's not coming to see him, I think, and then he's getting all these threats of violence and extortion threats in prison. I think that's when he's going to lose it. And I think what he may want to do is try to flip on Wendy shortly after this happens when he's down there. And so I could see arrest coming down the pike for Wendy before summer starts here in June. And I think with Donna's trial in May, so I can see Wendy being arrested right around the time after she testifies. In fact, maybe right after she testifies, maybe that's when they'll go ahead and arrest her as she's trying to leave the courthouse. So I think you got a lot of critical information that's going to continue to be rolling out with these audio tapes that are being released. I know that Pretty Lies and True Alibis actually puts the closed caption above it and gives a little summary of that as well. So that's helped me look at some of them. I've not looked at all of them yet. There's a number of hours that have been released. I think I've looked at maybe an hour and a half of them as my guess. But in any event, a lot of good stuff. And I think that also one thing that to keep in mind from the recordings also is that keep in mind, Donna said this conversation to those people in the room, circling back to that, she said, everybody looks to protect you. I bet you've got a lot to think about. That's what she texted back or emailed back, I forget which it was, to Wendy, when Wendy basically gave a defense lawyer type statements like, stay away from me, don't talk about the case, I want nothing to do with this case, I'm not involved, I'm innocent. It's really something that sounds like a defense attorney would write. I mean, this is just a mother imploring her daughters, like, show some sympathy. Why don't you ask how we're doing? She's not calling them up, say, hey, mom, how are you doing? And what's going on? Are you and dad, you heard that terrible news that Charlie got arrested? It's just cricket. She wants nothing to do with them. No conversation. It's all because she needs to get this message out there. And the message will probably be on the extracted cell phones and maybe the tablet they also got out of the search warrant that they did on the Harvey and Donna high-rise condo. So who basically says a lawyer type response to your mom after her son has just been convicted for something involving a life sentence without parole. It just doesn't make sense. It just sounds like something is done by somebody that's totally scared. They probably reached out to their attorney. They're wanting to have some kind of lawyerly response of innocence. If your mom knows you're innocent, then why would you even be talking about guilt or innocence about you? She's just asking about, why are you just blowing us off on this thing? So it's really so bizarre. And then think about the aspect that Donna is then saying, I bet you've got a lot to think about. So that she's talking about everyone looks to protect you, and I bet you got a lot to think about. I'm thinking that sort of sounds like, you're a part of this too, and so don't act like you're so innocent. So that's sort of the gist that I took from it, of what she's talking about. And so I think that the evidence that Charlie is saying about Wendy's involvement is really so convincing, to point that just one circumstance as I've been saying, is enough to convict somebody of something as serious as murder. One circumstance that is so damning, and it's almost like DNA. That what are the odds, right? So what are the odds she just happens to drive by? What are the odds she just happens to not check on her children at all? What are the odds she jets out of there, not even asking what happened, even if it wasn't the house, but it was the house right in front of there with crime scene tape. And so the other thing is the hit versus the TV, that code, the TV code, which was the alibi set up by trying to have the window of time frame between 8 to 12 to make it look like she could not have taken part. But what does Charlie even say about Wendy? She just couldn't help herself. And that's actually what I have said on the, I think it was on the, it's been on previous podcasts I've done with my brother John. And so I said she just couldn't help herself. She couldn't just wait to see if her fears of all this impending doom she's about to face in the court proceedings that Dan Markel has filed, if she couldn't wait to see if it was accomplished yet. And so those are what I've described as 1A and 1B, the two most damning things, piece of evidence against Wendy's involvement, which is driving there so short after the murder. That's 1A. And then 1B is not even asking about your kids, right? And then you got some of the other factors, like mentioning the TV. TV's cheaper than a hitman. She mentioned that to the guy that was coming there to work on the cracked screen of that TV. So these things are just so damning for her. And then, like I say, the TV code ties them all together. So it ties in not just Wendy with the TV code, but it also ties her in to basically Donna. That's like a huge piece of strength in the prosecution evidence against Donna as well. Not to mention the fact that she, of course, says that when Charlie asks her, what's this involved? Who's this involving? She says, between you and me. And granted, they're trying to keep Wendy out. And when Charlie mentioned, well, does this have anything to do with Wendy? And she's like, no. Like, don't go there. This is part of the agreement. Don't ever bring up Wendy when you talk about this. So Charlie even let that slip and asked if this was this about Wendy. So anyway, the evidence is really coming in and gelling together good. The prosecution is going to be able to bring a much stronger case now because of the release of this information. I think it's going to continue to get better as well. So with that being said here, let me go. Okay, am I back live here? Am I live? Yeah, it looks like I'm live. Okay, sorry about that. I went to grab my mouse and it just zapped the whole screen. I couldn't find the Google icon. So, wow, that's bizarre. Anyway, sorry about that. All right, let me look for questions here. Thanks for staying on. Please bear with me. I don't know. I just touched my mouse and it just zapped everything. So that's just bizarre. Anyway, I got John's camera working good. The new camera got me. So thanks, John. All right, I'm scrolling out at the top looking for questions. Yeah, I'm not the tech mentor here, that's for sure. Yeah, no, Leona didn't pull the plug. The little kitten, little LJ. No, she didn't pull the plug. It was me just hitting the mouse pad here. Huh. Yeah, somebody mentioned Charlie has lights on 24/7. Yeah, I heard that as well. He's mentioning that the lights are on 24/7. So, okay. Looking for questions here. I don't see any. You guys got a lot of chat going on here. All right, so we have. All right, I just see a lot of comments. Not seeing questions here that are ready to be responded to here. So here, I'll be the judge says, I agree that they have loose lips, but not checking on your brother after being sentenced to life without parole is beyond callous. Yeah, and that's why even Donna was getting really irate about that. But he wasn't checking on Donna and Harvey either. Hey, Mana's asking, did you find it odd that the conversation seemed to be so everyday casual, like regular humans talking on the phone every day? Well, I think he's sort of like he's not ranting and yelling, but I do think that he's always trying to like explain people's behavior and explaining how this and that works. He's like being the maestro talking to his mom again. That's what he's used to doing. And so if you look at the way he's saying the jury got it wrong and that Georgia misled the jury. There was no evidence against him, and all this stuff that's common sense on one hand. But on the other hand, he flips around and basically makes it sound like that's not evidence. So he's sort of talking on both sides of his mouth, and he thinks that anything that he says, the jury should automatically believe. And Rajbaum told me he was very credible on the witness stand. I think he scored him as like a 95. And I think he told him beforehand, you got to do better than 70 to have the jury like you. But he came across so terrible on the witness stand. I mean, that's just it's all cringe type stuff. As an attorney, no matter what side I'm on, if a client of mine came across like that, I would expect to lose the case, no doubt. And that's exactly what happened. So Lori Gregory is saying, do you think Wendy set this all up and made trouble that Donna was going to not be allowed to see the kids, and she kept pushing this on Donna? Then Donna involved Charlie and Harvey, and Wendy set up her own alibi. Um, and Yeah, I mean, I think she totally she played this to the emotions and rage and anger of her mother, and her mother then flowed it down to Charlie. Because think about it, from what the perspective we get, Charlie and Donna, Charlie and Wendy do not talk that much, especially about her personal affairs. He's always hearing it through his mom, Donna. So the thing is, I think it was just up to Charlie. He would not do this for Wendy, be involved in this murder. But when his mom keeps telling him, how he needs to save her visitation for the kids, and he's mentioning the fact that Dan was working to deny him visitation. Well, sorry, but he had a job up there, and that's where they decided to settle down and reside and have their marriage and have jobs. And he had the job that carried Wendy on the coattail. So Wendy got that job at the FSU Law School only because of Dan's excellent credentials. And as you recall, I mentioned that I actually met with a leader there at the FSU Law School at the time who's actually admitted that Wendy would never gotten hired at this law school, and they only hired her to be able to because that was a condition of hiring Dan. So that's how much head and shoulders above Dan was as a professor at that law school. So Mariella Energy saying, how long does Charlie have until the window for flipping against Wendy has closed? Well, as we see, you know, even after she lied at several trials, that Katie was given the opportunity to come clean. Now, it may not help her reduce her charges at all. So the fact he's already been sentenced and whatnot, and I think it's makes it a little bit less of a sell because wait a minute, you got life without parole. So he may try to flip, and they probably won't deal him any kind of guarantee of shaving off any amount of time or anything like that. So they may say, we'll decide after you cooperate and after you testify, and then we'll score it based on how well you did testifying against other family members. So so I guess here we have Breeze Coyote is saying, are Wendy and Harvey guilty of a crime if they were given the commission of a crime as a surprise gift? Well, it wasn't a surprise gift for Wendy, and for Harvey. Harvey was definitely involved in all conversations that they had about that we know about after the fact that this happened, and he was also instrumental in getting forth the money for Katie out of the clinic. There, he gave the car, even though it was Donna writing the checks, and then he also gave his Lexus to Katie. What was Katie doing? Why would he get that directly to her? It shows a direct tie. Why did they have his cell number? Why did they also? Why was he was there at the car with? Think about it, he was with Donna when they drove by and dropped off that moldy cash, all that moldy cash. The day that Dan got shot in his garage. So he's got his fingerprints and DNA all over this as well. So this is not an issue of him having a surprise aspect of not knowing about anything of this that's going to happen. So in Wendy, if you look at the indicators of guilt, we've got that on Jury Trial Mentor here. It's just it's really overwhelming the amount of indicators that you have, and there's even more coming out from what we're hearing about on these tapes. So all right, so next question here. Yeah, so it's yeah, the one in a million thing, that's what's really so incredible. It's really even higher than that. What are the odds? One in a million. I mean, that's so much a strong indicator. So Diane's asking, could Charlie cut a deal with the state against Wendy and have the current judgment and sentence vacated? I don't think the judgment would. I think what normally states have is that they have the ability to shave off a mandatory minimum. So it's something otherwise a mandatory minimum, if there's cooperation and it's substantial assistance to help convict other criminals, and usually it's co-conspirators. And what happens is the prosecutor recommend like a certain percent reduction of the life without parole, or maybe they'll say a specified number of years off of life. So instead of like 60 to 80 years, maybe they'll recommend 50 years and whatnot. So I can't tell you exactly what happens in Florida there, but yeah, there's a mechanism in every state to allow some kind of cooperation and substantial assistance, just like there is in the federal system, is my estimation. Okay, Hunting on the third says, speak about Charlie's delusion about how he thought he'd get acquitted. Okay, so what I've said in previous videos over the past year almost is that y'all have to look at it from the standpoint of especially high income, wealthy individuals that are prosecuted when their defense attorneys meet with them. If they any time in the beginning of the representation, if they say, you know what, this evidence looks really damning for you, I don't know, I don't see how you're going to get walking out of that courtroom without a conviction. If they say anything along those lines, where they don't have strength and confidence in what the clients tell them, then you know what, they're going to get fired. I mean, and you would have nonstop, just continued discussions about it'd be basically a breakdown of the attorney-client relationship, because the attorneys realize that their client is not going to take anything that they say that they don't think they can pull this out, that they don't think this evidence is there to be able to explain things away sufficiently to get an acquittal. So I just think it's inherent, like a business decision, that Charlie's probably never asked, hey, what do you think my chances are? Maybe he's never asked that. Maybe he just assumes it, and he's just looking for a confirmation bias from his attorney disagreeing with him. So, like I say, I don't know of a single attorney that has any experience that would believe this is a credible case. So I don't know, obviously, what was told between them, but I just from my experience and instincts, I can say Not that I've witnessed that before, and that's not something I do either. But I think it's the norm among the defense bar. If you got a client that's got big bucks, you don't want to lose them. I mean, you're going to lose $1 million client and not have the ability to represent them in court. Because what would happen, whether it's a normally it's probably going to be a flat fee versus an hourly rate. But even if it's a flat fee, let's say for $1.5 million, if you within the first month tell them, like, you know what, I looked at the evidence, this case is a dead loser for you. Do you want to talk about pleading guilty? If you do that in the first month, guess what's going to happen? You're going to get fired, and you'll have to prorate your billing based on that $1.5 million, and you'll have to basically, maybe you'll get 25, 30,000 bucks out of it. So by you opening your mouth and speaking that kind of opinion is not going to let you keep that client. So I think that's what happens in most cases where you see this. And what you don't see that happen, though, is, of course, with the public defender. Public defender is not a business deal where the attorney's not going to make any more money off the defendant, whether they plead guilty or not. Court appointed, they don't make as much money, but they can make decent money depending where the state and locale is. But and that's going to be an hourly rate. Sometimes it's a flat rate. Like Luis Rivera's attorney, he got. I remember him testifying. He got 25 grand, and I don't think that took a whole lot of time to do that, to get him to flip. And so, in any event, the thing is, I think from my perspective, the more money you have as a criminal defendant, the less likely you are to have the lawyer confront you on how bad your case really is. So, and so that's what happens. Therefore, you don't have, if you don't tell the client how bad it really is, you don't have a lot of fights with them. You don't have to worry about getting fired as an attorney and having to give them back some or most or all their money. So that's the way I think it works in the real world. And so that really makes a lot of sense if you look at it from a business perspective. And okay, sorry, I already had that one there. I need to go down instead of up. So here we have Slenarius is asking, when do you think Wendy will be arrested for the murder? Yeah, I think it's going to be before June of the 2024. Oh yeah, let my cat take care of the mouse. That's a good one. Yeah, thanks for tech advice here. Yeah, Texas Fizz is saying, what can Charlie benefit if he flips on Wendy? Well, that's the thing that remains to be seen. Like I say, maybe they could shave off a certain percent, or maybe shave it off for life, so he does have a chance at parole. And but the other thing is, I think he's probably really going to be a super high risk for suicide. I think he's going to try to go down where he's at now for being processed. I think he's talking him into like just acting like he's a cool cat. He doesn't have, they don't have to worry about him committing suicide. And I think that's a real threat, because it's going to be so horrific for him. And I think he's just really dreading it, the way he was talking about Donna about, getting stabbed and stuff like that. So, and Donna, of course, was talking about just, falling asleep, taking something, and it was her and Harvey just, fading away and never waking up again, and never even seeing Charlie again. So, yeah, it's just amazing how much they threw everything away. Everything they had going for them is just all crashing and burning up in flames around them, because they wanted to kill the father of their grandsons on the from Wendy's prior marriage. It's just so just baffling how people can lower themselves that kind of evil depravity. So here's a question. What from Teresa Bringus asks, what harm to Donna can happen if Charlie flips on Wendy? So, well, I think I mean, he could maybe have a deal where he says, look, I'm agreeing to flip on Wendy, but you must agree to not prosecute my mom. That may be something he's willing to do, but there's no telling what he's willing to do to just let it all become exposed. And if he's basically suicidal, and one of the things he could do, and I know I talked to this forensic psychiatrist who has a doctorate in psychology, and today, and she indicated that there's a real threat. People like in Charlie's situation, they could want to do, instead of suicide by cop, do suicide by inmate. So that's something else that he's talking about stabbing there. Maybe he just would try to get in a fight and tick somebody off, and start a fight and just hope that they basically end his life in a hurry. So yeah, it's just going to be it's going to be really, really scary for him, is all I can say. So here, New York Patriot lady saying, Donna on call on 9/11/9, Charlie and her trying to distract Charlie so he stops accusing Wendy and Donna. So yeah, I've not heard that one yet, but apparently there's some information there that's coming out as well. So yeah, I think it's going to get just continue to build, and that's why I think the prosecution is just chomping at the bit, ready to go, ready to arrest them. But I think they're probably going to wait until they have Wendy testify against her mom. So Anna Wilder's asking, can Charlie get any time off at this point? No, he can't get any time at this point because he's life without parole. So unless his case got busted on appeal and resentenced, he's retried. And even Charlie said, look, if they find some kind of error on appeal, what are they going to do? Retry it with that same Tallahassee jury? He just doesn't trust Tallahassee juries, and he basically was accusing the prosecution of kicking off all the ones that would be favorable to the defense. So basically, he was saying to Donna that the worst of the worst jurors were the only ones left, and then basically then Donna was saying they're basically at the third grade level, and that's what that whole awesome video production appealed to them as like a Dateline documentary type of thing, where it's easy just to convict. But what they failed to realize that and discuss was that that documentary had such valuable critical information. It tied it all together, and so that's why it was so difficult to pick apart, because it's just a beautiful presentation. So awesome job by the state there, and that really helped seal the deal by showing this evidence is very digestible. It's very, very, very much a lot of details that you needed to pull together in a very articulate fashion, and having that chart to go off of the slides and the highlights. Charlie was talking about the yellow words were highlighted as the testimony's going along. And what I'm saying for this here, these a lot of this stuff coming out now is they're going to do the exact same thing. The state attorney's office is going to highlight the words Charlie's saying, indicating that Wendy is so involved. And it's just, what are the odds? It's just so crazy. So um do I think Charlie learned things in the trial he didn't know and was never told? Well, yeah. I mean, I think the first time he heard something different is when he heard me on the radio saying what a slam dunk win it was. If he heard me the day before the closings, or the morning before the closing started, I said the state had absolutely crushed it. There's no doubt in my mind, or words to that effect, that Charlie's going down. This jury is paying close attention, and he will be convicted. And I think he probably heard the next day after the conviction. Then, so when I was saying what an awesome job the presentation was done and the graphics display, where I described it as a movie and a documentary, it was so compelling, and it was just so easy to find him guilty at that. So I'll be judge says Charlie Adelson knows his case forward and backward, up and down. There's no way he just now considering Wendy's action is significant. He hasn't heard from his sister. He says, I'm so stupid, but you're so smart, question mark. Well, yeah, I think that despite there being no indications that they've communicated the whole time he's been there in lockdown in Leon County Jail, um, I just think that I just think he was so self self full of it that he didn't see any of this evidence for what it was. And so he was deluding himself into thinking that none of this stuff is evidence. And if you can just basically have that cognitive dissonance and not really realizes what this evidence is, and if your attorney doesn't tell you what it really is, and this is how you do get convicted, then maybe he thought, Wendy's testimony really wasn't that big a deal. So I don't know for sure, but it just is so strange that he thought he had a good case. I mean, granted, a lot of clients do. They think they got a super case, and you got to sort of like bring it on the up and up to them what the really chances are they have, and have those critical discussions on, do you want to flip on somebody? Do you want to plead guilty? But it looks like they never had that conversation. It was just like, yeah, it's all about winning, and just as soon as he's going to get the verdict in, he's going to walk out of there. Bloomingdale saying, you called it on the quick conviction and Wendy's culpability despite the PR efforts from their lawyers and supporters. Yeah, when you think about all the folks that are saying that, there's not enough evidence there, that there's a chance of hung jury and all that kind of stuff. Um, and hung juries can take a couple days before the judge declares a mistrial. So I think, I mean, it's just common sense stuff. It's nothing sophisticated here. And if you got experience in your back pocket, you can easily see this for what it is. So, and you guys as you know criminal case followers, you guys get it as well. And so, like I say, most people get it. 99.9% of the people really get this. It's just a few folks that are either on the take, being paid, or they got some other agenda that's why they don't get it, and why they don't um, demand justice like we are. Mia Simone is saying, please elaborate on Dan Rashbaum's behavior, such as passing notes between Charlie and Donna. Yeah, that's just really weird. Having conversations with your client's mom, who's also your client, who now you're representing. It's just something I would never do. I don't ever want to be caught in that, because think about it, if Charlie wants to flip on his mom, well, that's his client too. So you can have that conversation, right? So it's just really odd. It's just really odd for me, and I would never recommend it on anybody I'm supervising. Yeah, Sonny M is saying, did you hear the tape when Donna was insulting Markel, saying that they only wanted to see the boys for publicity, and the boys hated the meeting with him? Yeah, I heard that as well, where they said that basically it was just a stage thing, and they're saying, look at them. The Markells came down, and they only want to see the boys for less than an hour. They didn't even talk to them. They didn't even give them a hug. They didn't even give them a kiss. And then 12 hours later or less is when Charlie got arrested. So it was just all a thing to make him look good. I'm like, wow, that's just so. It just shows you how much they just don't get it. You really think that the Markells don't care about the grandkids, and didn't want to see them, and there's not a huge void and loss in their life? That just shows how out of touch reality these people are. They're the ones blocking all the efforts to call. They're the ones that don't answer the Facebook. They're the ones that don't answer the email and deny the boys access to them. They're the ones that don't send the boys up there. They're the ones that control the boys and not see them for more than 90 minutes. They're the ones that don't say, hey, why don't you go, grandma's down here for the winter. Why don't you just go spend a couple months with grandma, or at least on Christmas break or something? So it's all just smoke and mirrors, right? Jason Truth is asking, will Wendy's trial be larger than Charlie's? So I would bring in like a day and a half or two extra additional information on her whereabouts, what she was doing. You'd have to bring in like her testimony, her statement that she gave to Detective Isom in there, where it looks so contrived and fake. Her testimony, it looked like there was fake tears and whatnot. So I think all that would really help seal the deal, that this was all an act. It was all staged to make it look like she was upset. And why would she be crying then of a guy she hates, and he's about ready to end her job, and trying to get her in trouble with the bar license and all that kind of stuff? No, she was all about giving them daggers, that struck a low blow, just like the Pearl Harbor divorce and whatnot. It was all about revenge. And if it wasn't about revenge, she could just tricked him into moving down to Miami and not had this. But she'd rather have a knockdown, drag out litigation rather than just saying, "Hey, let's just go move to Miami. And let's see how things work out, and let's go to counseling for the boys' sake." But no, it was all about just bust him in the chops, try to just crush him, and that's what she did with the Pearl Harbor divorce, and that's what they're doing with this hit. They wanted to like send a message of retaliation. Dorothy Jane's asking, "What do you make about Charles incessantly repeating on Wendy the Truscott episode? He can't shut up about it." Yeah, I think I think he could be sending a message. Basically, you guys need to look at Wendy. I think it's starting to trickle into him that basically, if I never get out of here, I can't stand the thought that Wendy's going to be walking around free the rest of her life. So she is asking, should Harvey be worried? Absolutely. I mean, if he can't even listen to what's going to happen to his son there, and he has to walk into the bedroom and lay down and take some Xanax, yeah, it's going to be a something that he's going to be worried about, because he's got his wife there. It's like wife of 50 years or whatever it is. She's now in Leon County Jail. And think about it, they're still recording those conversations if they, in event she is off the suicide watch, if she's allowed to make that call. But who knows how long she'll be on suicide watch? What if she's on suicide watch this whole time? Just think about how mentally she'll degrade. But that's why I think they're going to have that local Tallahassee lawyer. We haven't heard who that is, but they're going to have a Tallahassee lawyer there to just try to help her mentally stay in focus and keep her spirits up, just so she doesn't basically have an utter collapse and giving up the will to live. AM is saying, I think most of the recording was a show planned between Charlie and Donna through Dan, the attorney, as if they didn't realize they were being recorded and gave the impression of coincidental innocence. Yeah. I mean, some of this, they definitely knew they're under recording. That's why I think it wasn't so much Donna confirming what Charlie was saying about Wendy's involvement and how it hurt him, but I do think that the fact is recorded. I think he knows that they're going to look at that, and that's why I think he's sort of like trying to get the prosecution fired up to go after Wendy. Don't know for sure, obviously, but that's my suspicions. Uh, Samaj is saying, "Well, Susan and Rick have to be witnesses in Donna's trial." I don't know if they're lawyers or whatnot. I think one of them might have been a lawyer, or maybe they both were, or an accountant or something like that. So it all depends who they were. But I would definitely see if I can interview them if I was the prosecutor. So maybe they would be, just don't know. But maybe there's some other stuff once the phone line dropped that they could say as well what happened. I think it's important like that as a prosecutor, leave no stone unturned. So why not go after statements from them? Okay, Flower Child is saying, did you look at the pretty lies and alibis? Charlie talked to the housekeeper Janice, talking about emails. He says the idea isn't even in the emails. I guess he's the idea for the murder isn't even in the emails. I have not seen that yet, and so maybe somebody else can comment on that. I've not seen that yet, but I did see some of it about where it said it was a housekeeper. And one of them sounded like it was maybe not the housekeeper, but his girlfriend Bree. I'm not sure about that, but Senex is asking, will Rashbaum suffer any repercussions from what was said? I mean, I don't. I mean, other than maybe them losing trust in him, that could possibly happen. Where he basically was encouraged. I didn't hear all the details of it, so let me rephrase that. The He was saying something effective, from what I recall, that you never know if you're going to get arrested going there, but there's only one way to find out. Kind of thing was the gist of what I remember. So don't quote me on that, but he didn't say she shouldn't leave. But think about it, him telling her to, now is a chance maybe to escape if you want to have that chance of not being arrested. But what did it do? It sped up the arrest. So basically, his advice helped her get arrested sooner, if you believe that's what the advice was. So Evelyn Santos, yes, I so do you think Wendy will be arrested after Donna's trial? Yeah, at or right after she testifies, I think would be a prime time based on the strategy I see from the prosecution's office. Crime is asking, are the dates of the calls going to be as far up as the 13th of that'd be of December when Donna got arrested? I believe they should be. I'm sure they're talking on the phone every day. So yeah, I would expect that to be the case. It's just taking time to get all these uploaded and whatnot. I think that's what's going on. Yeah, this is a question statement. I think Charlie now can say, "Oh my gosh, when he went behind my back and hired Katie and I didn't know." Yeah, I mean, maybe he's gonna revert to that being his story or something, but remains to be seen. But yeah, I think he's making it look like Wendy was a part of this, not me. She made it look like I'm a part of it. And anyway, it's just a lot of bizarre thinking. Chloe's mom, yes, I think these calls are damning to Wendy. I mean, it's not as much the fact that it's new evidence, it's just reinforcing the way juries think about circumstantial evidence. And like I've said, just one indicator of a circumstance is very overwhelming, is enough to convict. And so I think if you got all these other circumstances which are laid out on JTM, that I think you can drive home a conviction, you'll get the conviction and it will stick on appeal. So yeah, definitely, these calls are helping, I think, increase also the public calls for more arrests and prosecutions. So definitely, I think this is definitely helping. Mandy Strong saying, "Who do you think Charlie will call first after Donna is arrested?" Well, Donna's already been arrested, so she was arrested on the 13th of November. She was there a number of days in the Miami-Dade County Jail, and before she was transported up to the Leon County Jail in Tallahassee. So she's been there um, since in confinement since the 13th of November. So it's been over a month now. Doesn't seem like it's been that long, but yeah, that's Julia Nelson is like asking, do you know if Wendy looked at Charlie during her testimony at his trial? Did she smile? I did not. I don't think I ever saw that where she looked at him and smiled. So if I got that wrong, somebody else can clarify. There might have been one time she sort of looked at him that I think somebody said happened, but I didn't witness that. It looked to me like she wanted nothing to do with looking his way. Tony Bernales is asking, do you think Donna is going to go with Charlie's defense that Charlie told him about getting extorted? Since he's got Rashbaum there, that probably is. Rashbaum's going to probably have him repeat the same thing, and so yeah, that's probably my guess. But like that that kind of defense theory is just going to be another disaster for Donna. So it's not going to fly. Judy D saying Charlie's just realizing that when he played him. Yeah, I think he's known that beforehand. I think he's just sort of trying to maybe fire up the prosecution to go after her. I think he really has that kind of like cynical contempt for her, where I can see him doing that. Okay, the question here by Jojo Wilcox: Who had the kids at the time of the murder? They were in the daycare, so they were in a daycare that Dan had dropped him off about 9 o'clock, and after he dropped him off, he called Wendy. Wendy did not answer her phone and went to voicemail. But I thought he would have told him, "Hey, I just dropped off the kids," but Wendy never said that in her testimony at this last trial. That's what I assumed. I was giving her the benefit of the doubt, but the in any event, they were at the daycare and they got picked up, late after, sometime that afternoon, later, I think, by one of the friends that they called for picking up the kids and then bringing them to one of the girlfriends of Wendy's, I believe it was. So Holly Hawk is saying one of the calls Donna clearly mentions is that Rashomon knows they're fleeing and mentions that they might not make it out in time, but it's worth trying. Does he have any culpability? Well, I think as if there's not a warrant out for your arrest, you're just suspicious you could have a warrant. He's probably not done anything wrong per se, but like I say, he it actually worked out where he ensured the quicker arrest of his client. So um, it does have culpability, sooner arrests for Donna. So Angela Whittick is asking, do you find it suspect the release of the jail call, et cetera, the defense wanted them released? No, I don't think the defense wants this released at all. I think it's very hurtful to them, and it's just a building of the mountain of evidence against Donna, and like I say, it's also hurting hurting Wendy's chances as well. This is going to come back on her, if and when she's prosecuted, which I think that will happen. I've already answered this sort of for Bonnie Lee Lopez. Do you have any theories what kind of defense Rashomon will use, or will they stick to the ridiculous extortion? I think it's the latter. And I mean, you got nothing to go on. So you might as well, I mean, you could basically say that, some alien swooped down and did it, not Donna. I mean, that would be about as ridiculous. Here, Madeline Bullitt is asking, is it legal for Rashomon to know and tell Charlie of the Adelson's plans of leaving the country? Well, Charlie is his client. They're both clients. And I assume that was passed on where they wanted him to know, is my guess. I don't know if they actually said goodbye or anything like that. I've not heard anybody talking about that. I have not seen all the tapes. So if anybody else knows the answer to that, please jump in. Here's a question from Kathy Carson. She's asking, are there any jail calls after Donna's arrest? Well, after Donna was arrested, she was allowed to make some calls, I believe, from the Miami-Dade. But when she got up to Tallahassee, she got put on suicide watch. And so I think it was very limited calls, maybe only a couple calls in Miami. Now that I'm thinking about it, but um, she's made one call to Harvey briefly, since she was been up there before that court hearing happened, and then she was allowed a visit by her attorney. That's rolling over from Charlie to her, which is Roshbaum. So and so yeah, other than that one call to Harvey, I don't think she's talked to anybody else. Markeith Morris is saying, is there any kind of scenario where they arrest Harvey for leverage against Donna and or Wendy? Yeah, I think the more folks you arrest, the more it dials up pressure for somebody to figure out how they're going to sort this out. And Harvey, if he can't even take it, just listening what's going on in prison, if he's arrested for first degree murder, he's going to be held without confinement, just like Donna. And so the he's not going to be able to hold up with that. So maybe that would incentivize Charlie to throw a lifeline and say, look, if you don't prosecute my dad and mom, I'll flip on Wendy, kind of thing. So I don't know that they'd be willing to do that. That's really a individual specified judgment call for the state attorney's office. So Wayflare saying Donna realizing she's been used as a babysitter is a classic. Yeah, I mean that was sort of the gist of it. She was mad because she was always been she said in the talks there, she was always been available, dropping everything to help Wendy take care of the boys. And now after Charlie's conviction, now she pretty much is like um, just cutting them out, doesn't want really any association with them, it sounds like. Annie Brookman is if Donna's convicted, is she going to get her Social Security Administration benefits? Not sure about that. I don't think they have something to penalize you for those if you're confinement. Not sure. That's a total Social Security Administration question. But yeah, it would you'd think they'd have some kind of cutoff thing. But yeah, sometimes people fall through cracks like that and they still get the money. So Susan Young is saying, what could Charlie expect in the way of a reduced sentence should he roll? It's very, very much up to what the state, I think, wants to do, and it depends how much substantial assistance he provided. So it's too early to say, and he would have to, like I say, provide something that's substantial, have any kind of meaningful shaving off of it, and they may not even want to cut a deal with him if they got enough evidence against these folks to say, forget it, we don't need you. We're going to use Wendy against your mom, and then we're going to arrest Wendy and Harvey maybe together and try them together. So I think that would be a nice move if you're not going to try all three of them together right now. And Maui Swift is saying, I'm really taken aback by how Charlie's so floored he didn't walk out the door. I believe he's actually believed he is innocent, and I don't. I think he's. Gosh, do I think that he's actually thinks he's innocent? No, because I think after the murder happened, he's probably rubbing in and bragging about the maestro, can fix the problems no matter how big or small they are. So I think he was bragging about it. So I think just act like he was never involved, never did anything. And keep in mind, he had to be keeping the hitmen funded for over extended period of time. It wasn't just one payment; it was on like basically installment plans, especially to Katie, who was always demanding some other favors and benefits. All right, jumping down here, some newer comments. Okay, here, Milan Labe is saying, unless it's changed, SSI goes to the state if you are in the ward of the state, nursing home, et cetera, used to work for DHS. Okay, so yeah, that it would probably be a mechanism that prevents you from collecting. So that's a good thing. Here's a comment from Hamona again saying, I suspect he didn't think ordering a hit was as evil bad as ordering a hit, just my opinion. Yeah, I mean, I thought, the ends justify the means. And so it wasn't that big a deal, I don't think, to him. Claire Nettleton is asking, would the children automatically be sent to live with Dan's parents if all the Adelsons go to prison? Well, they're in Canada, so I think that poses a lot of problems. And so that's not something that is going to be easy to fix. And I don't know exactly how that would turn out. That's really a state child protective services type of issue. Now, some family member steps up and says, "Hey, we're willing to do that, and we're willing to, be in the United States, be there locally, or something like that." A lot of jurisdictions don't like to give up the jurisdiction they have over minors. Same thing like with Wendy's divorce thing. They're not. It's really hard to win and move kids out of the jurisdiction of the court where they resided prior to a divorce proceeding. So Shiloh's asking, what is next for Wendy? Well, I think Wendy's going to be in this extreme paranoia stage right now where she doesn't want to talk to any of her family members. And I think that's going to actually make things worse because they're going to become more angry about the fact that she's the one skating out, that they were all in on this together, but yet Wendy's the one that's home free, living her life as normal. And all their assets are being burned up, and anything that's left, Wendy's going to be the only adult that can manage them. And think about it, they're even trying to give her instructions on how to be, where their assets are, where the legal stuff is for their estate planning and all that. And Wendy doesn't even want to take part in any of that. So I think that she's just trying to do this effort to keep everything out of her mind, try to avoid conversations about this. Her boys, she's going to be saying, probably nothing. From the looks, from what I saw, it took Donna to tell him what happened to Charlie. So I don't think, from what I heard, it wasn't something that was done by Wendy. I think Wendy's just trying to just completely do everything she can just to distance herself, put as much daylight as she can between her and her family members, and they cannot bring up anything having to do with Markel's or Dan's murder, or even bringing up Charlie. Now they probably are told when you're around Wendy. Wendy probably told the boys, do not bring up anything about Charlie in this house. And so that's total brainwashing. affect those poor boys. It's just already 50% of the adults, 2 out of 4 are already incarcerated. Yeah, and that's true that Barb 4017 saying Donna laid it all out. The kids are on their own. Grandsons don't need a babysitter. Now I can go. Yeah, and she was like willing to leave Charlie and stuff. So so Sonny M saying give Charlie 25 years to turn on Wendy and admit guilt, then give Wendy 25 years life without parole for Donna. I mean, something like that could be worked out, but I don't have to give life without parole for Donna if she'd agree to that. So but there's going to be I think, some kind of flipping here in the near future if they remain alive. So Terry Mack is asking if Charlie flips on Wendy to help his parents, if Charlie's arrested as well, Harvey's arrested as well, wouldn't that affect his appeal? Well, you're sort of in a situation like Katie, so I think arguing your innocence and all that. I don't think they would supplement the record like that per se, and so, but I think the courts probably know about what happens, and so that might help steer the opinion, even though it's outside the record, to for them not to find any wrongdoing. I don't know. Maybe there's some mechanism they have to supplement the briefs or something based on a confession. And so I just don't know. I just haven't seen that before. Bloomingdale saying it's every Adelson for themselves at this point. Yeah, I think it's going to wind up becoming like that. And like I say, with Wendy cutting them out, I think that's gonna help them realize, you know what, we're not going to let her live her life. I mean, basically, she's killed them off already the way she's acting, and so yeah, I think that's going to really eat on them, and they're going to be like coming out with revenge. Here, Letterman's girl says Charlie learned the real truth about Wendy's book at trial, and so no one's mentioned the cover of the book. Wendy's fake blue eyes in the cover, no coincidence. Yeah, so the book was all about her, right? So she tried to deny it at trial. She tried to say it was a friend of hers, and so let me see here. So I think that yeah, the stuff about the book, yeah, Charlie was talking about that as well too. Remember? So I forgot to mention that. Charlie was really going on about the book. He's like, what are the coincidences? That book basically just set up your escape plan to leave from Miami. And that the book was written when in 2011, 2012. So it basically forecasted the way, in so many words, that's what Charlie was saying. It basically forecasted her plan. You stop thinking about it, she's been planning this kind of escape for years, not just since 2013, as she told Jeff Lacasse. So yeah, that's really bizarre. All right, let me look at some other questions here that I have down here, or statements that were given. All right, so let's go. All right, so there was let's see. Some other blurbs of what was commented. Yeah, so here's the more of a quotation from Charlie when he's talking to his mom, and this is something um, that John had extracted out and sent to me. And here's the quote: "Let me tell you something. That right there is one in a million. That she goes on that date at that time by the street of the house, and then say that she wanted to make sure the job was done. Listen, you don't dispute that she didn't take that route. She took the route. She did. And she was there. And she did a right point turn. Donna then says, that's right. The fact that she put her F car there at that time, at that date, and on the way out of her way is enough for people to go, whoa, she must have known something was going on. There's no way she shows up there at that date, at that time, without having prior knowledge. She's involved. And by deduction, if she's involved, that means that the other Adelsons are involved. So in that sense, it was really put some weight on all of them. But Charlie was just letting it rip. Charlie also says, driving by the scene out of her way to buy a bottle of bullet bourbon, I would have to say something like, if it smells like SHI, you know what, then it is SHI, you know what. And it makes her sound like she's part of it. And if she's a part of it, then I must be a part of it. So yeah, I mean, that's how they put the case together, that this is a family hit job. It's finally sinking in. And like that's what I'm saying. For him to now be saying this like this, blurting this out, I think he's just egging on the prosecution. And then he says, it's things like that can make somebody, meaning a juror, shut out everything else. Why on God's green earth is she doing that, going to a liquor store, when she just go to 3 that are closer? See, that's the kind of circumstantial evidence that jurors look at and help get a conviction. And then he says, what are the statistical chances of her leaving her house and driving by that scene on the date and time and not to be involved? Donna then says it's absolutely crazy, but it's true. It's what happened. So there you got Donna even chiming in saying, yeah, I mean, what are the odds of that happening? I mean, it's just so obvious she's involved. And then Charlie on Wendy's crime scene inspection says, Mom, if I was sitting at the bar with somebody telling me the story, that's one part of the story I'd have to really have a hard time of getting over. And then he says, you went out of your way to go to a liquor store when you could have gone another way. That's just creepy. So here he is calling his sister's behavior creepy, within, right after the murder happened, within an hour or so. And then what she wrote in the book, that's just a coincidence, question mark. And then Charlie says again, it sounds like she's writing about herself. Yeah, and in fact, that's what she said in the back of the book. In the acknowledgement, she said, this is a book about myself. And what did she say at trial? She said, no, it's a book about a friend of hers. So those are the kind of things that are really telling. I think another thing that I would bring out as a prosecutor is that if you notice, Wendy can't even say Danny's murder. She only describes it as a death. And I think that's something that jurors would pick up on. That's sort of like a consciousness of death, of consciousness of guilt, I should say, that you're not even talking about it as a murder. Like, you're not disgusted with the murder. Like, you'd rather just like soften it down to say a death. Well, who talks about a family member if you really loved them and were upset enough to cry about him? Why would you call it a death? A death is something that doesn't happen with extreme violence like that. So it's just really bizarre like that. So and then also on Charlie on Wendy's book says, it sounds like she's foreshadowing a future event in her book. It sounds like she's foreshadowing her being moved to Miami. I mean, this is like so much evident in what he's saying is the kind of stuff that Georgia would be arguing about the behavior of Wendy that could also be used against Donna's trial. So it could be used in both trials as well as Charlie's. And Charlie went on to say, if I was sitting at a bar and someone's like, she had nothing to do with it, you know what I'd say? I'd say, get the HELL out of here. So, I mean, here's Charlie basically just really dropping these slams on Wendy's behavior of indicating guilt. And then here's another good one. The ex-wife goes out of her way to drive by the murder scene right after a hit man comes and kills her ex-husband after she talks to her mother and brother. Wow, what are the coincidences of all that? And then he goes, you just painted the picture of the definition of a conspiracy. And then think about the fact that when the hitman called Katie to say, hey, we got the job done, she goes, I already know. Well, how would she have known that? There's only one person in Tallahassee in that short of time frame that would have known about that to let her know, through Charlie, and that would have been through Wendy driving by. So all this paints a perfect picture. And this information alone right there with the book and this kind of stuff coming out about her driving there and ignoring it, and then also the code, all that, those things right there, just a handful of those things right there are enough to easily convict her of murder one. No doubt. And then if you go on all the others, there's well over 100 more than that. And then Charlie also says, TV talk, day of the murder, and day of the bump ties it all in. Yeah, I mean, that's exactly what Georgia has to argue. And she could even say, this is what, Charlie laid out how his own sister's guilty. And what I've said is that Charlie's laying out improvements to Georgia's closing for Donna and Wendy. So a lot of this stuff is actually good stuff to use for both of them. And then keep in mind, Charlie's talking about 1 in a million chances that Wendy shows up to a crime scene. The other place he said 1 in 10,000, like I said. But yeah, 1 in a million. That's like DNA type of stuff, right? So in any event, that's the kind of stuff that I think is so damning. It's only going to continue to get worse. The pressure is going to continue to mount to have prosecution efforts made against the other Adelsons. Let me jump down here and see. Ryan Yeager saying, if they want to use Wendy's testimony against Donna, wouldn't they wait to arrest her till after? Otherwise, she wouldn't testify against her mom. Well, that order to testify can be even if you're like a defendant in a proceeding. If you have testified in other proceedings, I don't think that would stop them. But I think that's probably what method they're going to use. RN is sitting here saying, the longer this goes on, the more I think, honestly, Donna's going to take the blame. She wants to die already. If she can do it while protecting precious Charlie and Wendy, she's going to do it. Yeah, I think she's not going to try to do it legally. I think she's just maybe going to try to give up and just hope she dies in the cell without having to have a conviction on her record. Because if she rolls over and confesses, that doesn't mean they're going to let off the gas against Wendy. They're still going to arrest Wendy. So what's she going to do? Just plead guilty and not cut a deal? I mean, a deal's not going to cut her any breaks at her age. So I just don't see her taking the blame. Yeah, I think Bonnie Lee Lopez is saying Charlie's coming to the horse reality of just how far he's fallen and for what while he sits in the cell. He was complaining about urine and fecal matter on the walls while his sister's eating lobster. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's really he's going to start reverting to the revenge mode here, and I think it's already started to happen. This is a sign he's going to keep stewing. He's going to keep getting mad and wait till the real horror show starts once he's transferred to the next spot. Gloria Rosser says, "Do you think Wendy will visit her mom in jail?" No, I don't think she is at all. I think she just she realizes that you can't keep a lid on what these guys are going to say. They're going to want to talk about the case, and her lawyer's going to tell her don't go there. Is my guess. So don't see that happening. Do I think Donna will testify if she does go to trial? If she makes it to trial, then with a speedy trial, she probably will, because she thinks she's like the maestro, where she thinks everything she does sounds compelling and truthful and legitimate, and they just have no clue of how ridiculous this whole defense theory was. So they have no discernment at all in being able to figure out, is this case a strong case or not? And if you got lawyers, if the lawyers are not telling the straight up truth of how strong the case is, then then she's going to get a rude awakening. Hers just won't take a year and a half like Charlie's. Hers will just take 6 months or less. Lila here saying, I saw Wendy's examination many times that she does look at him, mostly at the end. Also, when Wendy was answering, I got the impression that they agreed on a lot of stuff she was testifying to. So what I said during my live commentary was that it was obvious to me, the way Rashomon was asking the questions, that the questions were already sent to her lawyer, and her lawyer looked them all. They worked together to present these questions to Donna, and the questions that they didn't want Donna to ask, I'm sure her lawyer told Rashomon, don't strike these, and add this question and that. So they were working together. They're working in concert. There's no doubt in my mind. She didn't act surprised by any of the questions. She was right away ready to answer them. Like, she was well prepared. on all the questions that Rossbaum had for on cross-examination. So thank you for that. So here we have Andrea Snyderman versus Wendi Adelson. They have so much. I do not know that case. I don't know which one that is, but there's so many other cases. People have been asking me to cover some other cases here that are going on now, and like there's so many of them. Like somebody just made a comment about the Pike County of 8, like 8 family members got murdered a couple years ago up in Ohio, and that's not really being covered well in the national news media. So yeah, there's so many of these things going on right now, and it's really sad to see. So there was another thing I remember was he was talking to the I believe it was the Janice, the housekeeper, and she was talking about taking his 80-inch TVs out of the bedroom and living room. He's like, Wait, you don't be taking my TVs because I got, I'm gonna the house is going for sale or I gotta rent it or do something." It's like you have these big brackets on the wall. If you take the TV off, maybe they would have taken the brackets as well. But he goes, I don't want you taking them off. So anyway, it's sort of like they were already talking about stripping his house a little bit just because he's not ever going to come home. So I thought that was uh, that was interesting to hear that they're already looking at like scavenging stuff from the walls of his house. Yeah. So AM is saying that Wendy no longer has any use for her parents and brothers. She used them, got what she wanted, is moving on. And so, yeah, I agree that that just reveals that she doesn't her in her character. She does not care much about her family's well being at all. And I mean, she didn't care about the boy's father's well being. So really, why would she care about anybody's well being if it's not self serving? So I think that's really the gist of it. So here, Barbara Taylor saying Charlie questioned his mother where the half a million came from. Donna had no response. So I didn't know what this is something I've not seen about, but somebody that got released sometime today, and I've not seen that yet. So that's I don't know which half million that they're talking about. So you might want to add that here if you could add that for those of us that haven't seen that. So real juror is saying Donna treats Charlie like he can do no wrong, and I think Rajpal did the same. It makes sense to me why he was so surprised by the verdict. I mean, if everybody's telling him he's did great, because he's talking to his mom after he testified, and that means that they actually did watch the trial. So I guess they would have watched the live stream from Tallahassee Democrat or some other shows. And I guess they could have looked at JTM as well. Who knows? But I doubt it. I think they would have looked at like Tallahassee Democrat or something like that. Yes, Jane is saying, Gardner is saying maybe the children will go to Robert Adelson and his wife. I mean, that's a potential. If the if the Markells aren't able to take custody of the kids wherever they would want to, yeah, I would say that's a potential option because he would be a good him and his wife would be a great option in the event any of the Markells couldn't to help try to help unwind all the brainwashing. Because think about it, he got brainwashed as well to an extreme degree, to the point they're willing to cut him out completely just because he married somebody that they didn't approve of. How sick and cruel is that? Okay, Truth for the Boys is saying, do you think the current Adelson PR campaign is in hope of ever a retrial and so much overt planning done by other Others of the family, so Wendy has plausible deniability. Yeah, I just think that there's really stuff they are really launching a counter offensive to the all the podcasts and stuff like that. And that's another thing he was talking about. He was complaining about the podcasts covering the case and stuff like that. And I don't know if he even knew about this beforehand, but he's suddenly mentioning it when he's talking about the case now. So I don't know where he got that information from, but podcasts are talking. All these podcasts talking about the this murder case. And think about it, there's a lot of new channels that have come out, and I think that's a great thing. I think it's great the more people that take interest in this and have more different angles of what's going on in this case. I think that helps put pressure on the state, and I think it's a great thing for the justice for all the Markells. Sarah Glenn's asking, is Wendy working on her own defense? Well, I think, she's paying probably, $1,000 an hour or something for this John Lauro, who's also representing Trump in his four different court cases around the East Coast. So how he's got time for Wendy? It's like, how would she have that much pull with an attorney like that? That's just really bizarre. And so I would have expected her to be dropped as a client, but for him to sit around the courtroom there waiting for her to testify, really, really strange. Okay, here's a good question from Nicole Hernandez. She's saying Charlie continues to tell Donna he should have trusted his gut. I think he meant defense strategy or pre-arrest idea to flee. Yeah, I think it's the idea to flee. I think I think even as Finn Ryan Fitzpatrick had mentioned that too. That it's like, dude, why don't you stay overseas? Because they're going to eventually there's a there's a chance they could come after you, and it's going to be too late, and you'll never know, kind of thing. So yeah, I think he just wishes he would have stayed over there, and I think he's probably scoping it out. He's probably scoping out Vietnam and some other places where he was traveling as a place to escape. So I think that's what he's talking about. He should have listened to his gut instead of trusting other people. But part of the trust of other people is maybe the attorney saying, "You got a good shot. Hey, what are you worried about, man? You're not gonna get arrested for this. And even if you do, the case is weak. So just don't worry about it. Why will leave your practice here?" And if you think about it, he could have gone to like Vietnam. He could have changed his identity. He could have gotten plastic surgery, cosmetic surgery, had reconstruction, changed his total looks, and have a new name and set up a new practice there. And you know, and if with the money he has, he could have probably bought the protection of the government there if he would apply for citizenship. Because right now he could probably apply for citizenship and been granted that, and then surrender his U.S. citizenship. So maybe they wouldn't have um, let him be extradited at all, especially if he's good guy paying taxes, high taxes for the government, greasing the skids that way. But he decided to stay here, and maybe he was relying on lawyer advice. I don't know. So Tickled Pink Music is asking, is Rashman going to represent Don along with the female attorney? Is she even a criminal attorney? No, my understanding is that Maricel Galzo, I think is how you say it. She's going to be released from Miami, and instead of her, they're going to bring in a local attorney there from Tallahassee. Don't know who that is, remains to be seen, but they're interviewing local attorneys there to be able to help basically help be doing hand holding until the trial starts for Donna. All right, just trying to go down here. Ron Nielsen is saying, "How are those poor boys not being bullied daily at school?" Yeah, I mean that's a good point. I mean, they're right to age 13 and 14. There's a lot of bullying going on, mockery and stuff like that. So um, I don't know if they tell classrooms when the boys are out, "Hey, do not mention anything about this, or you'll be in trouble. We'll put you in detention," kind of thing. I don't know, but kids can be cruel. So yeah, I'm sure it's really, really hard on them. Okay, so Melina Atkins is saying he will not flip. Being a snitch in prison is the worst fate. Yeah, but if he's subpoenaed out of there and they may move him to a different prison afterwards, I think that it's different ratting on an inmate versus ratting on somebody else that's on the outside. I think that would be a little bit different. But in any event, he's going to have a hard enough time whether he's flipping or not, and they know about it. He's going to have a real horrendous time just based on his status as a wealthy dentist. Armand Fence is saying Carl has the state overcome. It's both of us bumper mark Wendy's case. Very easy because she was like panicky that he would even bring up Wendy's name. No, 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 no. Like about 5 or 6 times. So, and then you look at this, her behavior. Look at that, the way that Jeff Lacasse was framed. Who would be framed for 8 months? That's one thing that Charlie didn't bring up. That's one of the top ones as well, right up there. Why would you frame Jeff Lacasse for 8 months roughly for either being the fall guy or for framing him to be the I'm sorry, framing him to be the fall guy, or else having him be the hitman, encouraging him to be the hitman by bringing up how much she wanted him out of her life. So that's how you know all these other indicators. And if you go through our our other YouTube videos, you'll see stuff where there's well over 100 indicators. I have a better list I'm working on now. I had a better list I'd put out there on Survivor that you could look at. That was done over the last year. Okay, so Thunder Road Queen is asking, what is about Wendy's book that Charlie keeps referring to in calls? Well, there's so much about the book that parallels basically the disdain of her husband, who was a professor. The university had to be named Northern Florida State University, and that was in not Tallahassee but Hiawassee Springs. So sort of a similar type of name as Tallahassee. There's a lot of parallels also in terms, like she also brought up the death of a mate. I think it was in some kind of, was it the Chicago movie or something like that. And she basically makes a mockery of her husband. Basically says he doesn't love him and that kind of stuff. And so it parallels a lot of what she also thinks of Tallahassee. She basically calls that Hiawassee Springs basically the off. It's a step towards civilization, meaning it's completely off the grid of civilization. And so yeah, just a lot of mockery of not only Dan and but also Tallahassee as well. So yeah, I would like I say, the credit of the book, what she said was it was in the acknowledgement. She says modeled on herself, but yet at Charlie's trial, she testified that it was based on a friend of hers. So that was another complete lie. And she acted like she couldn't even remember the name of the town it was based on, or the name of the university. I mean, come on, really? Andy School is asking, did I hear about whether how Donna, the boys missed school the day after Charlie's conviction? Can the state look into their truancy surrounding the case, Wendy's instability? I mean, I just don't see him doing that. But I do think that, I think it was just that day of the conviction that he was, they were, they were, they were left out of school that next day, and then they had to go to school the day right after that, which seemed like really soon. But maybe they already processed it and they're ready to go back to school. So I don't know. Yeah, here, Mother of Hens is saying Charlie proclaims his innocence and never mentions extortion. Thinks he came off as amazing in court. Yeah, that's a good point. He's not talking about it like he's an innocent person, and he never talks about the exculpatory evidence that was presented, because there was none. There was no exculpatory evidence other than what he was talking about is this absolute nonsense, just complete self-serving nonsense. Just such a far-fetched pipe dream. Um, Hypotremic is asking, did you hear about the tape where Donna and Charlie fangirl about their expensive jury expert Josh uh, Dupin? I think his name is spelled differently, but Dupin. I think it's a little bit different. But he did such a great job. The jurors only needed a couple hours to convict. Yeah, um, yeah. I mean, he said basically they all the good ones somehow got the good ones for the defense got booted or were a couple alternates. So yes, all that $1 million did not help him at all. Let me jump down here. Some new comments. All right, so Phoebe Beach says Charlie never says, "Why didn't I go right to the police when Katie extorted him?" Yeah, because it's just all contrived. I think his main focus is on how Georgia was able to convince the jurors that are at a third grade level of how he's guilty without having to use evidence. And he's also basically saying, well, the flip side of the more you think about what Wendy did, Wendy really implicated herself, and that wound up hurting me. So it's sort of like, well, Wendy's actions are the one that looks guilty of any Adelson's, but not mine. All right, so I think we're gonna get ready to. Yeah, I've already said that he should have gone with his gut. Yeah, that was about fleeing the country. Definitely about fleeing the country. Star Moon says, "I don't believe jury expert." Yeah, I mean, if you bring in folks from New York into Northern Florida, I mean, what do they know about Northern Florida people? It just doesn't make any sense to me. But that's what they wanted to go with, and they up and leave right away. I've never seen that before, where jury selection folks don't sit through the whole trial. So just looks really disjointed. I think because they would have had the most contact with the jurors, and they up and leave like they bailed out on Charlie. They didn't think his case was gonna be able to be sold to these jurors that they wound up with. So it doesn't look good. Yeah. So yeah, they don't house co-conspirators in the same prison. So Luis, he's in federal custody. So none of these folks are gonna be in the same prison. So they'll have conflicts checks and make sure they don't wind up in the same prison to get stabbed or killed or something. Katrina's asking if could the court stop Wendi Adelson from making money off her book, especially if she gets convicted. Different states have different laws like that. I'm not sure about what they have in Florida. Yeah, Geo Kennard is saying the most glaring hole in the whole defense is that the hitman would go and kill somebody first without being hired, and then go to Charlie and demand payment, expecting they get paid. I mean, that's just so far fetched. Real world doesn't work that way. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I don't know if Maureen Walsh is asking. I hope Wendy's book has been removed as part of FSU students' book recommendations. Anyone know if that's happening? I don't know, but I would hope so. Yeah, I skimmed the book and it was not anything worth reading. I'll tell you that. How they made that required reading was probably because she was married to Dan, the clout that Dan had, or something like that. That wasn't. I don't think it's because of the quality of the book. All right, I'm going to take one last question here. So here's a question from Method. What type of evidence might the authorities have that we do not know about other than the cell phones? Thank you. Well, we also know that they got a tablet that was at Harvey and Donna's residence. And So we also don't know what they have acquired back since 2014 when the murder happened. So they grabbed more evidence along the way. I've seen part of the police file. I've not seen the entire police file, but I think there's a lot of evidence we don't know about. So for anybody to say definitively there's not enough evidence against Wendy, it's just flat out doesn't know what evidence there is. And I think anybody that says that the prosecution, if they had enough evidence, they would have charged her by now, is wrong, because I think it was politics that stopped her from being happening sooner for Charlie. Definitely, look at how strong his case was, slam dunk win, and they didn't even need the enhanced videotape to convict him of his conversations with Katie. That's how strong it was. But prosecution was being extra cautious, I think, in rolling this out. I think the new prosecutor since 2016 is Jack Campbell, and I think he's finally able to shake off any of the after effects from Meg's and his really bizarre statements that indicate there was some kind of corruption going on to protect the Adelsons. And so I think that he's given the green light now to Georgia Cappleman and Sarah Dugan to go after him as they see fit. And so I think we're going to see more stuff in the very near future before next summer about having not only Wendy arrested, but I would say Harvey as well. And so with that, I'll go ahead and sign off. Thanks for your support of Justice for Markells. And just keep looking at this evidence. I appreciate some of you that have sent me emails, give me different insights and stuff. And like I say, no one attorney can claim ownership of all the nuances and details on a very detailed, sophisticated case like this. But all it does is help continue build the evidence that's already out there, the overwhelming evidence of guilt, especially for Donna and Wendy. So I really think that you guys are really doing a great thing to help get the message out that justice is still not done. We're only 50% of the way there towards getting justice for the McHells by the crimes committed by these Adelson characters. So with that, thank you, and have a good night.